Hello, everybody. I'd like to share my personal testimony of how I became a believer in Jesus Christ. The title, I think most people don't have a title to their walk, but it was Born Gentile. I found Jesus as a Jew. I grew up outside of New York City, so I had a lot of Jewish friends. And the church that I was going to, this all happened when I was about 16. And the church I was going to, I got disillusioned because they didn't understand the little bit that I knew about Jesus, that he was Jewish. And then it just wasn't matching my energy and the slow hymns and all that other stuff. So I decided I'm going to pursue becoming a Jew. And I didn't know how I was going to do that, but that was just in my heart. And so I stopped going to my parents' church, and I searched on my own. Well, at 17, I met the Jewish man in high school, who was going to be my husband for almost 50 years. So that was a real blessing. And I felt like that would get me to the objective of becoming Jewish like Jesus was, so that I could find him, if there was anything at all to the fact that he was the Jewish Messiah. So that's what I did. We got married at 20. About 6 months before we got married, the rabbi sat down with me and taught me about Judaism, and I have a certificate to say that I'm Jewish, if that matters. But anyway, we had our first child 3 years after we were married, and about just a few months after he was born, we headed to California to be with my in-laws. And I was determined to be a super mom. That was big back then. Being able to do it all, to be a productive person in the workplace, work full-time, have a supportive family, take care of my kids. I had 3 by the time I got back to working in a job full-time. And the company that hired me, get this, it was owned by Christians. God had this idea in mind to guide me through. And it's a good thing he was there, and I'll tell you some of the things that he did. Because by the time I was determined to be a super mom, the gods of power and wealth with the job, those were taking over. And I was very satisfied with the gods of power and wealth. I really didn't need God Almighty, or even maybe my search for Jesus. I didn't need that. But then God started bringing circumstances and people into my life. My father-in-law, Cal's father, he had been widowed a couple of years. My mother-in-law died when we were only 26. But he ended up remarrying to a Hebrew Christian woman, a Jewish believer. And then my brother and my parents back in New York, they all expressed to me that they'd become born again, whatever that was. And then my sales and marketing motivational books included paragraphs of what Jesus said in the Bible, or what Jesus did in the Bible, and they turned it into a sales motivation stuff. And then one of my best friends from high school sent me a letter over Christmas that Jesus had made the difference in their marriage. Their marriage had been put back together. She had become born again, and she mentioned the Living Bible as being very easy to read and something that I should look into. Well, I really wasn't interested, but I started to see the writing on the wall. But then it was when the invasion of the Christians came. Wherever I went, there were these outgoing Christians talking about their faith. On the grocery line, there was somebody in front of me or in back of me. The sales check at Walmart. Some of our good friends had been born again and shared that. Co-workers and even clients were coming out of the woodwork. It was unbelievable. It made me so very uncomfortable. But at the same time, I recognized that God might be at work. So I picked up that Living Bible that my girlfriend Angie had recommended, and that really started answering my questions. And then I almost forgot, my brother Dave sent me The Late Great Planet Earth, and that, there were things quoted in there. This is in the Bible. That's not in the Bible. And I'd find it in the Living Bible. It was unbelievable. So finally, through a lot of investigation and about 6 months of trying to find my place with this whole Jesus search, I decided that I would pray the salvation prayer. My mother had sent a little piece of paper with it, and I confessed whatever sins I had to confess, but I didn't have any. I was very naive. And I asked Jesus into my heart, and I said, if there is anything at all to you, come into my heart and change my life and give me the confidence to be able to deal with my Jewish husband and his Jewish family. Anyway, so I went to sleep on that, and the next day I went to work. Everything was pretty normal. Toward the end of the day, I walked into the last office to do sales and marketing, and there was a man there named Jim Alisi. I'd never met him before, and he was reading a book. I said, what are you reading? Taking an interest in your client. That's what you do in sales. And he said, oh, I'm comparing what Jesus Christ said in the Bible to what this famous psychologist said. And I thought, oh, wow. I just dropped everything. I shared my conflict, my fears of my Jewish husband not understanding, my marriage being over and everything, but I wanted Jesus in my life. And he stopped me and he said, you need to do what you need to do for yourself and trust Jesus to do everything else. When he said that, I had such peace. I drove home in ecstasy. I knew Cal would understand. I was excited to have Jesus in my life. And when I shared with Cal, yeah, he didn't quite understand. But being the wonderful, compassionate husband that he is, he said to me, he said, you do what you need to do. Just don't talk Jesus to me. And I could do that. And so I accepted Jesus fully, and I started to grow, and I can't look back. My life has been so much better. My family's been so much better. My marriage was preserved through some difficult times, and I'm just thankful that today I can share that Jesus is my Jewish Messiah, and thank you for listening to my story.